Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday here at noon. And then I posted up to We Need to Talk on Facebook. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. And I would like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They are an online therapy company. They will set you up with an online therapist no matter where you are in the world. So if you are outside of the United States, you're having trouble finding a therapist over where you are, like the UK, you can just get on to BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez and they will set you up with an online therapist here in the States. You guys will have to work out the time change because, that's a thing. And if you're here in the States and you don't want to see the therapist that's in your small town, or you don't like the therapists that are around you, or you want to find an online therapist, go to BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez, and they will set you up with a licensed professional counselor in your state. So PhD level or master's level, all licensed, which is very cool. So thank you, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. Woo! All right, that is out of the way. Hi, guys. Hope everybody can hear me because I'm trying out this new mic situation and it's just technology and I do not get along. All right, so let me get some announcements out of the way. So you may be wondering, where the heck is my background? So the background is in storage right now because we are painting our house and putting new flooring in. So that will come back in a few weeks. So this is going to be your background for now. Okay, what else do I need to tell you? I am still considering touring. It's kind of iffy right now. We'll see how the numbers go. San Diego may or may not happen. Not sure yet. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Susanna and I have decided to hold off on the seminar until we can see what the numbers are doing, all that sort of good stuff. So, because none of us want to get sick. So anyway, there is that. Let's see. Oh, I read a really good book yesterday. This is the one perk of being, I guess it's called an influencer on Facebook. So I had a publishing company send me a book and they said, could you please read this and give a recommendation? And it's a great book on divorce. So as soon as that book is published, because they totally demystified the whole divorce thing. So as soon as that book is published, I'm going to be telling you guys about it because I love the author, and the author is in Mesa, and I'm just like, get out. So hopefully I'll be able to have her on the show. Anyway, she goes through the whole process. Like, what does this legal term mean? What does that legal term mean? What do I need to avoid? What do I need to do? The difference between separation and actually getting a divorce, the whole thing. So it was just awesome. And as soon as I can give you the title, I will. I'm not sure that I can yet, which is why I'm kind of like, okay, I just read this book. It was awesome. I gave a really good review of it to the publisher. So as soon as it gets published, and I'm trying to get a hold of the author, get her on the show and we can start talking about divorce with an actual attorney, which I think would be fantastic because I know you guys have got questions. So anyway, there is that. Thanks, you guys. All right. So Susanna Quintana, my girl, at SusannaQuintana.com is her book, You're Still That Girl. I love her. Love, 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 love. So eventually, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we're going to eventually be able to do a seminar. That's our evil plan. As soon as these freaking COVID numbers go down and it's safe, we're going to figure out how to do a seminar at a hotel, probably in Scottsdale. So, or Palm Springs, that's what we're thinking, but we got to make sure that it's safe for everybody. Anyway, in the meantime, her book, You're Still That Girl, Susanna Quintana, SusannaQuintana.com. She is awesome. I will be having her back on the show sooner rather than later because she rocks. The Casbah, of course, there are my books, which is What's Wrong with Your Dad, which is about me growing up in a extremely dysfunctional and messed up household. And You Can Lead a Horse to Water, but you can't make him cha-cha, which is about why some people get into abusive relationships and are able to get out and other people stay. So there are my two books. If you are getting a divorce, Splitting, Randy Krieger, Bill Eddy, fan-freaking-tastic because it goes through basically everything that a disordered person will do in a divorce. The other book that the author that I want to have on, she doesn't really hit the psychological stuff, but she hits all the legal stuff, which I know people don't understand. So, because I have multiple conversations about, no, the legal system does not work this way. I need to educate you. So I want to get her on so that we can talk about that. But this is a great book because it goes through every rotten thing that a disordered person will do, which it's so funny because it's like, I'll tell my client, look, they're going to do this, 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 this. Oh no, they would never do that. And then they do it and they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I've been studying this for, 14 years now. So yeah, they do that. Don't expect them to behave kind or nice. And of course, Shahida Arabi's, The Highly Sensitive Person's Guide to Dealing with Toxic People. Love her. Love this book. Great book. Highly recommend it because she has journal entries, things to do journaling wise, how to get out of your head, get it onto paper and start moving forward. So great book. I love Shahida. At some point, swear to God and all that's holy, when I can get to New York, I would love to set up like a lunch or a coffee with her because I would love to meet her in person because she has been so immensely helpful to my clients. That book has helped so many people. So if you talk to Shahida, tell her I think she's awesome sauce. So, okay, hold on. Let me get there we go. All right. So, okay, today's topic, alphabet soup. So why am I talking about diagnostic, terms and tools and things like that? Well, this is all kind of going to meld in together because I want to start talking more about how to help your kids in the middle of a divorce and separation and all of that stuff. So in a divorce, why do you need to know this stuff? In a divorce, if it is obviously, if you're watching this channel, if it is a high conflict, cluster B, which I will explain in a moment, divorce, okay? Because that's cluster Bs are usually where the abusers are. There's cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C personality disorders, and I will explain that in a moment. So they usually are in the cluster B group. So usually what ends up happening is because of the egregious behavior of the abuser, the other spouse, the healthier spouse, will demand a psych eval, and well, you should. However, it's still a roll of the dice because of how uneducated and stupid, don't get me started, the family court system is and how some uneducated and stupid some psychiatrists are. Because remember, I've talked about this, narcissists and abusers tend to be attracted to the helping professions because of the power differential. And I talk about that in my new book that's coming out sometime soon. I don't know when, but probably November, December. And it's about basically becoming a therapist and, what you need to know before you decide to become a therapist, what you need to work on, what happens, things to watch out for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in my experience, there's been plenty of court-ordered family evaluators that I just sit there and I'm looking at them going, how could you miss this? How could you miss that this person, male or female, is an abuser? How could you miss this? Well, remember, the closer they get to the dark triad side of things, because everything is on a sliding scale, the closer they get to the malignant end of it, the more able they are to, lie, cheat, steal, charming, psychopath, Machiavellian control freak, and narcissist. And also all of the other personality disorders start kind of overlapping and coming into play, even though they may not be diagnosed with it. So this is what I want to talk about. So, okay. So it's really important to know all of the diagnostic terms. So if you are interested, you could get this ginormous book. It's the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5. I know they're going to be coming out with a new one sometime soon because this one was last updated, I think, in 2014, maybe. So, okay. So when you go to get a psych eval for the family, so usually what ends up happening is you can't just get it on your ex. They're going to probably have a family psychological evaluation, possibly for whoever they're living with, if it's a permanent relationship. So you need to know the terms. So I had a client, this was years ago, that got a psych eval. Everybody got psych evals. The abuser came back with literally everything in the book, like BPD, borderline personality disorder, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, antisocial. I mean, that would explain a lot, because that person stalked my client over the years, like literally over a period of 10 years, just would not stop. So, it's good to understand what the terminology is, so that when you do get the psych eval back, you understand what all of this means, and you're able to articulate why you need an order of protection or a restraining order against the person, especially after getting a psych eval back that basically says they're dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's start, shall we? Okay, so in medical, we all love to use acronyms. I don't know why, but we do. So I will let you kind of understand and know what everything means. Hold on just a moment. So there's also misdiagnoses that happen. Misdiagnoses, I never can say that word right. But there's a lot of misdiagnoses that happen. And especially, like I said, I don't trust all of the court-ordered psychiatrists, psychologists to really be up to speed on the personality disorders, because remember, when the DSM-5 came out, they really, half of the APA wanted to get rid of personality disorders. They said, oh, it's a choice. Oh, it's not that bad, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you a guess what I think their diagnosis is. So fortunately, the other half won out, and personality disorders are still in the DSM-5. But I do think that it would be good to start putting them on a spectrum. So, because really everything is on a spectrum. Down here you have traits of, towards the more malignant end, you have full blown, malignant. So I think that would be a good idea. So, all right, because there's so much to talk about. I'm sorry I'm so scattered. It's partially because I'm in a new place with a new microphone and I don't have my normal surroundings around me. And two, this is just such a huge topic. So let's talk about post-traumatic stress disorder first. Okay. So, because somebody was asking me, so when I go in, why aren't they using Cptsd? Because they haven't. It has to be run through the APA. It has to be run through whatever body of people govern the DSM process. And that's the same reason why malignant is not always used, because it's just it's just a diagnosis of, narcissistic or borderline. If they don't put those qualifiers usually on it. So Cptsd is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Complex meaning that the abuse happens over and over and over and over and over in different ways, maybe, but it's still abuse and it's still damaging the person. Okay. That's all that complex means. The C means complex, means it happens over and over and over and over. PTSD is considered, according to the DSM, to be like a one-time event, which is why PTSD does not really cover what survivors of abuse have gone through, because survivors of abuse have gone through days, weeks, months, years, decades of complex everyday abuse, every day ignoring or viciously attacking or destroying the person, the personality of the person, destroying their self-esteem, destroying who they are, the devalue, the discard, the cycle of abuse, the whole thing. It's like, it doesn't really, PTSD cannot, in the current definition, cover that, which to me is just like, wake up, geez Louise. So these are, this is why we need to have people who are actually out in the field working with survivors of abuse have a voice when the DSM gets updated. And I get so annoyed that we don't, or we haven't. And it really bothers me that they don't really understand what people in the trenches are coming up against. So post-traumatic stress disorder is generally considered to be a one-time event, whereas complex means it's happened over and over and over and over again. So I really think that it's important that if you are seeing a counselor and they are a trauma therapist, that they really document look, this has happened over and over and over and over and over. That's what good note taking is for. And I talk about that in my new book. It's like, if you're going to be a therapist, you had better take really good short notes that you're willing to read in court, that are taking a snapshot of what's going on. So it's important to note this stuff, because let's say you have to go to court. And this is the other thing that bothers me, is a lot of therapists are absolutely unwilling to go to court, or they fight the order to release their records. Well, you take snapshots when you do your records, not literal snapshots, but you're just doing a snapshot of what is the main issue, what are you covering, and what's the plan? How is this person progressing on your treatment plan? How are things going? Now, in a nasty, highly contested custody case or divorce case, the opposing party is going to demand notes because they're trying to find something that they can use against the good, healthy parent. So that's why you need to have a really good therapist that takes concise, short snapshot notes that, explain, okay, client reported that their ex called them 27 times, left vicious voicemails, which they have left copies of. I mean, do you see where I'm going? To back up the evidence? Like, if you've got multiple things showing that this person is an abuser, that's better. Does that make sense? So, okay. So Cptsd, all the C stands for is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Post, after the fact. Traumatic, it was a horrible event. Stress, anxiety, disorder, you're not coping with it well. So with PTSD, you will have things like impulsivity, crankiness, short temper, snappy, nightmares, eating problems, sleeping problems, rumination. You'll ruminate. You'll grab on to stuff and you'll just think about it and think about it and think about it and replay it and replay it. So that's rumination. It's kind of like chewing the cud. If you've ever been out in the country, cows chew cud. They got two stomachs, so they'll sit there and they'll all day long, on whatever they've been eating. It's just disgusting. But anyway, so rumination, flashbacks, emotional flashbacks, all of that happens in regular old PTSD. Like regular old, like that isn't traumatic. It's traumatic. It's, okay. So for example, like, let's say you're in a car accident or a motorcycle accident. That'll cause PTSD. That'll cause those flashbacks and the rumination and things like that. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it never stops. It's like the trauma just keeps on the hits just keep on coming, sometimes literally, which just don't get me started. So when somebody gives you a diagnosis and it's PTSD, make sure that and it's with abuse, make sure that they're commenting in their notes, this is ongoing, or this has been ongoing, this has been happening, this is complex, do you see where I'm going with that? Because you want an accurate snapshot of what you've been going through. Okay, so let's talk about the personality disorders. Okay, so when people go to get the family evaluations, the psych evals, right? Like I said, I have had some where the abuser has literally come back with just about every personality disorder you could possibly think of. They're dangerous. They've been stalking. They've been, cyber stalking, personally stalking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, paranoid personality disorder. What is that? So paranoid personality disorder is when they think everybody is out to get them. Like everything is intentional. Everything is out to get them. They're paranoid. They think that, they're being watched, or that they're being recorded, or that they're being whatever. Now, when we are dealing with abusers, very often the other party will tape them for their own protection, trying to show the abuse or trying to show what this person is doing or whatever. Just that's fine. That's okay. That's your prerogative. Keep doing it. But they will take it to the nth degree. So paranoid personality disorder is everybody's out to get them. They're being stalked. They're being watched. People can read their thoughts. People are, it's really cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So that's usually PPD. Paranoid personality disorder is the abbreviation that they use for that. When you get the psych eval back, I really want you to go through it with a fine-tooth comb with your therapist so you understand everything that is in there and you have no questions. Like seriously. And again, you're going to want to go over it with your attorney as well. But because they use a lot of terms and people don't understand, it would be really good to get with your therapist to read it through so that you make sure you understand everything that is in that psych eval. And like I said, narcissists are really good at being charming. So there's charming narcissists. Those tend to be the more extroverted ones. So they will try to fool the evaluator. They'll be charming. They'll be a people pleaser. They'll be, oh, you look great today. Oh, I just love my ex. They'll lie. They'll absolutely lie. And if the person is not well versed in this, then they'll fall for it. And I've seen that happen, which is why I got some of these psych evals back. And I was just like, what freaking drugs are you doing? Because can you not see this person is dangerous? Can you not see that this person is, and they fell for the charm. They fell for the whatever. And that is what abusers do. The other thing that abusers do is when you're picking up a person to do the psych eval, they'll try to pick somebody that maybe hasn't been doing it that long, or, somebody that, their lawyer has recommended, which you always want to be careful of. So, so there is that. Okay. So that's paranoid personality disorder. Schizoid personality disorder and schizotypal personality disorder. So these are they're not full-blown schizophrenia. They are aspects kind of it. And so the person exhibits kind of some signs of it, but that's not full-blown. So those I always get confused, and let me make sure I give you the correct definition of that. Hold on. 625. Is that where we are? No, 652. Okay, hold on. 652. All right, so schizoid personality disorder is when the person has a pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of emotions and expression in interpersonal settings, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts. They neither desire nor enjoy close relationships, including being part of a family, almost always chooses solitary activities, has little, if any, interest in sexual experience with another person, takes pleasure in few, if any, activities, lacks close friends or confidence, appears indifferent to the praise or criticism of others, shows emotional coldness, detachment, or flattened affectivity. This is why you don't generally see abusers in cluster A. So this is cluster A. So paranoid is cluster A. Schizoid personality is cluster A. And then schizotypal is a pervasive pattern of social and interpersonal deficits marked by acute discomfort with and reduced capacity for close relationships, again, as well as cognitive or perceptions distortions, eccentricities of behaviors beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, ideas of reference, so delusions, odd beliefs, magical thinking, unusual perceptions, body illusions, odd thinking in speech, circumstantial, metaphorical, over-elaborate, suspicious or paranoid ideation. So that's why you generally don't find abusers in the cluster A's. Now, cluster B's. So again, cluster B is where you're going to find your abusers. So cluster B's is in the personality disorder. So there's cluster A's, which are the three I just talked about, the paranoid, the schizoid, and the schizotypal. Cluster B is antisocial personality disorder. Okay. These are the ones that the rules don't belong to them. They don't feel like they need to abide by the law. They are often in trouble with the law. It's when it says antisocial, people always get confused. It does not mean that they don't like to socialize. That's what everybody thinks. They're like, but they can't be antisocial. They like to socialize. Well, that's not what antisocial means. What antisocial means is they do not agree or follow the social rules of society. They don't feel that the rules apply to them. So that's why they do that. It generally starts with oppositional defiance disorder, and then it progresses from there if they don't get help. So antisocial personality disorder can be psychopathic. They can, especially if they get away with stuff and they enjoy it. So yeah, so antisocial personality disorder. And oftentimes abusers will have that as a dual diagnosis. Like I said, I've had it where the abuser had multiple cluster B designations on the psych eval, so it's like, you got to pay attention to this stuff, and don't think, oh, just because it's a personality disorder that it's not dangerous. I've heard people say that too. It's like, no, wrong. If it is a personality disorder and they've got multiple of them and they are down on the malignant end, hell yeah, they're dangerous. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Because this is where you find your stalkers, because again, the rules don't apply to them. So that's why. Okay. Borderline personality disorder. Okay. Now, borderline personality disorder is in the cluster Bs. Here is what I am really passionate about. Borderline is born of trauma. If you get a diagnosis of BPD, you want to get with a good trauma therapist that does dialectic behavioral therapy. DBT. I know all of these freaking acronyms. If they would just speak like normal people, it would be a lot better. But anyway, so DBT is dialectic behavioral therapy. And what that is it's intense mindfulness is the best way I can put it. It's mindfulness. CBT can help with BPD, but DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, is the best effective known therapy for borderline. It helps with that. So, and if people are really interested in getting the help, they can and they will change. If they are further down on the line and they are malignant and they're harming people and they enjoy it, probably not. So, but if they recognize there's a problem and they want to get help, dialectic behavioral therapy is the best way to go. And generally what I've seen groups do or seen practitioners do is they do one session a week group, one session a week individual. And it really helps to kind of hammer in the changing of the behaviors, because the behaviors are based in trauma, which means that a person with borderline personality disorder has got PTSD, right? So post-traumatic stress disorder. So the trauma has got to be addressed while addressing the behavior that's been adapted, the maladaptive behavior that they have done in order to not be abandoned, because being abandoned is one of the worst fears. So it's all based in trauma. So it's really, really, really important that if you get a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, you get with a goddamn good DBT therapist, dialectic behavioral therapy that is addressing the original trauma. Yeah, I know. It's just so much. So, okay. So that's borderline personality disorder. Now, borderline also gets misdiagnosed as bipolar. Why? How? So, some people who actually have borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder get misdiagnosed as bipolar, and they start throwing a bunch of medication at them. Medication's not going to change the maladaptive behavior. It might help with the anxiety and or depression, but it's not going to change the basic behavior. The behavior has to be worked on with the dialectic behavioral therapy and dealing with the original trauma. So bipolar, let me explain. Bipolar, also known as BPD, because it's bipolar disorder. Okay, so bipolar is when the brain cannot produce the proper amounts of chemicals. Okay, so in other words, when the person is manic, okay, the brain will just flood with all the feel-good chemicals. It's kind of like a meth high, is what I've been told. So it just floods with all the feel-good chemicals, the endorphins, the norepinephrines, the serotonin, the dopamine, all of it just floods, and the uptake parts of the brain are unable to absorb all of the feel-good chemicals. So the brain is just sitting there bathed in these amazing feel-good chemicals, which is why when people are on a manic high, they can have delusions, they can have psychosis, they can have bizarre thinking. They will stay up for days and days and days and days. They will decide that they're going to go to Vegas and spend all their money, and they do. Or they decide that they're now going to pursue their singing career, and they can't carry a tune in a bucket. We had a little gentleman at the homeless shelter that would do that every time he went off his meds. And then he'd go into a mania, and we'd have to try to stop him from getting on a Greyhound bus to go to Los Angeles, because we knew he would get, robbed and hurt and harmed and everything else. So anyway, that's what's going on with the manic part of it, is that the brain is unable to reabsorb all of the feel-good chemicals, and the brain is just sitting there just bathed in all this stuff. And that's when the psychotic thinking happens. So you can have bipolar with psychotic thinking. Doesn't always have to be psychotic thinking. That doesn't always happen. And then what happens is that suddenly the brain is able to absorb all of the feel-good chemicals and then not produce enough of the feel-good chemicals, which causes the person to crash in the opposite direction. That's why it's called bipolar, because you either are up here or you're down here, and baseline is in the middle, and then you have very few days where you're actually, okay. So and it's cyclical. That's the crazy thing, is that it'll go up and then it'll go down, and it's cyclical. And it's usually on like it could be, if it's slow cycling, it can be 3 to 4, maybe 6 months, just goes up and down like that. If it's rapid cycling, it can be within the same day. And the rapid cycling is what absolutely needs to, all of it needs to have a medical intervention, because the rapid cycling actually does organic brain damage, because the brain is going from one extreme to another, one extreme to another, one extreme to another. And that starts harming the uptake receivers and senders. Basically, I'm really making this simplified. So, and that is a medical thing. That is not, and this is what makes me so angry, is that people get told, oh, you don't need to be on mood stabilizers. Well, if your brain is sending you out into outer space and you're thinking that you can go to Las Vegas and win $1 million and you end up spending your rent money, then yeah, you need to be on mood stabilizers so that you don't do self-harm. The other thing it does is it sends them into this terrible depression. And everybody thinks that people who are bipolar are going to commit suicide when they're depressed. Newsflash, no, they do it when they're in the manic phase, because they have the energy to do it. When they're in the depressed phase is when they're thinking about it and planning it. But then when they're manic, that's when they have the energy to do it. And that's generally when you see people committing suicide. So if you know somebody who is bipolar, you want to make sure they're on mood stabilizers. You want to make sure they have a good therapist. You want to make sure that somebody's aware of their cycles. Where are they at? Are they thinking suicidal thoughts? Are they talking about it? Are they giving away prized possessions? That kind of thing, just to make sure that they're okay. So borderline gets misdiagnosed as bipolar because of the manic phase. And of course, there's a whole bunch of different bipolar designations. There's bipolar 1, bipolar 2, hypomania. There's a whole bunch of different ones. So, but those two tend to get misdiagnosed. And like I said, if you've got a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, make sure that whoever you're working with is DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, and is addressing the original trauma that created all of the maladaptive behavior in the first place. So there that is. All right. Histrionic personality disorder, HPD. Histrionic is someone who is a drama queen. So they have to be, it's very similar to both borderline and narcissism. And I suspect that this one is going to get taken away in the next DSM, because it's an old term. It's Freudian, and we all know how much I love Freud. Not. So, So histrionic is, they're always a drama queen, screaming Mimi. Everything is, up here when really it needs to be down here. Lots of inappropriate dressing, very overly sexual, that kind of thing. So that's histrionic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder, I think we all know about that one. That's NPD. Narcissistic personality disorder is when the person has got overly weird expectations of how to be treated. So they expect immediate compliance with their wants, needs, and desires. They will lie about military service. They will lie to make themselves look better. They will expect to be seated at the best restaurant, even though their reservation was 3 hours prior to that. And it's a Saturday night, and they'll pitch a fit if that doesn't happen. So very entitled, very, constantly needing to be reassured, constantly needing to be told how fabulous they are, needs to have immediate, compliance with whatever they say, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then the cluster C's, how are we doing on time? Oh my gosh, I've gone way over. Sorry. The cluster C's are avoidant personality disorder. So avoidants are ones that just don't even try. If they're not assured success, they won't even try because it's too painful. Dependent personality disorder, somebody who cannot make a decision without somebody telling them what to think. Okay. Obsessive-Compulsive Personality disorder, they're compelled to do repetitive things or think repetitive, intrusive thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the different things that you'll see on psychovals when you go in. So again, I really encourage you that if you have any questions about any psychoval that you've had for your family, because they'll do you, they'll do the kids, they'll do your ex, they may do whoever the ex is living with, etc., that you go over it with a professional so you understand exactly what is being said in there. So yeah, and you may need to contest it, especially if the person doesn't get it. You may have to hire somebody else. It does get very expensive and it's stupid. And abusers intentionally make things financially difficult for their target of abuse. I have gone way over. I am so sorry. All right. All right. Hold on. Do narcissists and psychopaths cry? I have seen them try to, but no tears were ever actually produced, which is really scary. So one of my new favorite shows is Deadly Women. So I've been watching that, and I've been watching some of the other crime shows on Discovery because, I don't know, I just enjoy that kind of stuff. It's fun for me to watch it and kind of analyze as they're going along and go, oh yeah, ooh, I think I know what that is. And then they say, yes, it's this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Diagnostic. Okay, good. There we go. So in one episode, they were interviewing a murderer. One was on serial murders. It wasn't Deadly Women. It was a different show, but it was about serial murderers. And the guy had done a crime and he was then up for parole. And he was trying to get out, and he did the whole, sobbing voice, and the prosecutor or whoever the person was says, "That's really interesting. You're not producing any tears. Your nose is not running. Your eyes are not running. You're not crying. You're acting." And I was like, "Ding, ding, 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 ding. Yep." So honestly, is that the case in every psychopath? Maybe, maybe not, but that's a pretty good indication if there's no actual tears and their nose is not running. Because when somebody's crying, like genuinely crying, their nose starts running, their eyes start getting watery, and tears come out. But if somebody's doing the whole, and there's nothing, like no sniffles, and this person didn't even sniffle. So, it's like, So they pretend. Remember, narcissists and psychopaths. So that would be a dark triad, if it's a narcissist and a psychopath with the control freakness. If they're down at that end of the spectrum, they try to be very charming. They try to mimic the real emotions. So if they feel it's appropriate to cry, they will. When I used to do couples therapy, because I won't do it anymore, it's just too, especially since I'm only doing online now. So, but when I did couples therapy and the abuser would sit there in session with me and try to pull the whole, oh, I'm so repentant, I'm so sorry, I would pull the same thing. I'd be like, well, that's interesting. You're crying, but you're not producing any tears. So what's really going on? Which is another reason why I don't do couples therapy, because it's dangerous if you're dealing with abusers. So, anyway, so there's that. So, yeah, they can, if they're really practiced at it, but generally they don't produce real tears or sniffles or anything else. What's the difference between bipolar and borderline? Okay, so bipolar is a genetic issue. So bipolar is the brain being unable to pull up the correct amount of the feel-good chemicals and release the correct amount of the feel-good chemicals. That is a physical brain issue that needs medical intervention, i.e. mood stabilizers that will keep it on the even keel so it doesn't go too high and it doesn't go too low. Borderline is born of trauma. It is post-traumatic stress disorder, but they've developed, because of whatever happened to them, they've developed all of these maladaptive behaviors in order to not be harmed, in order to not be abused, that creates all of the behaviors that we know happens with borderline personality disorder. So they're different. And it can be worked on if you get with a good DBT, dialectic behavioral therapist, that's willing to help you confront the trauma, the original trauma, the attachment, the whatever happened that caused all of the maladaptive behaviors. So, but again, once somebody gets to the point where they think they're right and they like hurting people and they enjoy it, no, they're not going to get help, and they won't stick with it because it means really confronting all of this stuff. Okay, is it normal to have a meltdown 16 years after the divorce and all the healing therapy, etc. I went through? I think I still need to work on my self-esteem. It's still not the best. Well, yeah, because if you'd really, really healed yourself to this, you would be able to look back at it and go, "Yep, sucks. Yep, they're a jackwagon. Yep." And not have that raw emotional response. So I would strongly suggest getting with a good therapist. So there's a whole bunch of different modalities. Oh God, that's the other thing. So, okay, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, EFT, emotional freedom therapy, which is the tapping therapy, EMDR, crap, I always get this one wrong. Eye movement, desensitization reprocessing. So it helps you kind of skip the amygdala so that you can reprocess things, put it in the right spot, and not have it constantly at the forefront of your mind. So EMDR helps a lot with traumas. Some people it doesn't work with, though. So again, you do your research and you see which one you think is going to work for you. And then if it doesn't work, try a different modality, because there's literally hundreds of thousands of different modalities out there. Some of them work really great with trauma, some of them not so much. So that's why you gotta, and I talk about that in the new book. So yeah, absolutely. You got to kind of do your research and see. Working on self-esteem would be a really good idea. Boundaries would be a really good idea. Writing angry letters, processing it. What more do you need to process? What have you not processed yet? What is causing an emotional meltdown? What's happening? How have you not detached? So in other words, when you process the trauma, you're able to put the trauma back on the abuser. That's Pete Walker. Pete Walker. Love Pete Walker. Cptsd, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Chapter 3. I think it's chapter 3. He talks about putting the anger, the shame, and the blame back onto the abuser and not carrying it around for us. So for example, let's say the abuser just said horrible things, right? And lied, took everything that they loved about us and then flipped it on its head and told us that they hated us for that. And we start taking it personally, right? And we start carrying that around. We start believing it. That's when you kind of got to go, this baggage does not belong to me. I am giving it back to you. And that's when you write and burn the angry letters. Dear abuser, you, excuse me, you did this, 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 and I realize this is you. This is not me. I did not deserve this. I don't deserve this. Guess what? You're not allowed to live rent-free in my head one more second. Kindly go pound sand. And by go pound sand, I mean really go pound sand. You know what I'm saying? I've evicted you from my head. You do not get to live up here rent-free one more second. Goodbye. Trot it out to the barbecue, read it out loud once, burn it. And you may need to do that several times. It's not a one and done. It's you know what? I'm still hanging on to this. You did this to me and I've been carrying this around for 16 years. You know what? No, I'm not doing, you get, this is not mine. I refuse. Thank you. Bye-bye. You know what I'm saying? So detachment is eventually getting to the point where you recognize what is yours and what is not yours, and not allowing what is theirs to interfere in your best life. So get with a really good trauma therapist to work through that part of it. Read Cptsd, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Figure out what's still sticking and then unstick it and give it back and then stick it to your abuser. You know what I'm saying? That's the best thing. It's like, okay, you know what? This is not mine. Nope. Sorry. I'm not carrying this around. Have fun with that burden. Bye-bye. You see where I'm going with that? So yeah, that's what you want to do. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. All right. Is thought stopping and staying in the moment the best way to tackle ruminating? Yes. So ruminating can happen in various forms. Ruminating is where we replay an argument in our head. Well, I would have said this and I could have said that. And I should have said that. And next time I'm going to do, stop. That argument has been long gone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. It's in the past. Bye-bye. So thought stopping is where you go, fascinating. What am I trying to fix? Well, one argument is gone. I can't fix that argument. I know what I can do differently next time, but I'm not going to ruin my entire day by playing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So yes, I miss being able to say mother clucker as well. Yes, I wish I could. Sponsorship, it's a thing. So anyway, well, I could say mother clucker. I just can't say the real term. You know what I mean? Anyway, so yeah, when things come up and you start processing them over and over and over and over again, that's when you got to be like, nope, the sun is shining. It is gorgeous outside. I love myself. This thought is not allowed in my head. I hear you. I see you. I am not inviting you in for coffee because you're going to stay for dinner. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. And you send it along. Okay. So, yeah, that's what you do. And it is good for staying in the present moment. You bring yourself back to the present moment. So one thing I tell people is name a color that's in a room. How many color reds do you see? You know, oh, look, there's a red there. There's a red there. There's a red over there. There's a red there. 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, look at all the different color reds. And you bring yourself into the present moment because oftentimes we go in the Wayback Machine and we're in that moment as opposed to in this present moment. Something else that could help is reminding yourself this argument is over. You can't do anything about it. You can do something different next time if there is a next time. Hopefully there won't be, but and stay in the present moment. And thought stopping does help with that. And it does take practice. It really does, because we want to argue that argument all over again and win it. Nope, it's done. Let it go. Be gone. Live your best moment. Live your best life. Absolutely. Okay. Is stalking an indication of someone suffering from extreme attachment trauma? What goes on in the mind of a stalker while they're at it? Do they get a high out of scaring someone? I'm glad you asked that. Stalkers, it is not an extreme attachment issue. It's a power and control issue. So when a narcissist, antisocial, psychopath, narcissistic, control freak, Machiavellian, loses control, when their target of abuse finally says, we're done, bye-bye, bye-bye now, and leaves, that enrages them because it reminds them they're not all powerful and they think they are. Hold on. Stalkers tend to be psychopaths. Definitely antisocial, because they do not believe that the rules of the law of the land apply to them. So they will become enraged. It's done narcissistic injury to their little ego. Okay. So they're pissed because they're now being reminded that they are not in control. This is also why sometimes abusers kill, because that is the ultimate form of power and control. And you read about that all the damn time. In fact, there's an interesting case that's going on right now with that little girl that's missing out of Florida. So I've been following that. We'll see what happens. I don't have a good feeling about it. So anyway, the point being is that when somebody is losing control, when somebody cannot manipulate and control a person, they've lost power, it hurts their ego, and by God, they're going to get it back. They're going to show you. I'll fix your wagon. I've actually heard them say that. I'm just like, what Western have you been watching? Really? So they do. They get angry and they just, they want to show you who's really in power and in control. What they don't understand is that the law does not take kindly to that. Now, recently in Arizona, it makes me so angry. It's like we go through these swings of the pendulum. It's like on one side, a few years ago, they were allowing orders of protection like nobody's business, hardly asked any questions. And now they're barely giving out any orders of protection unless the person's actually, shown up with a gun. And I'm just like, can we use common sense here? Oh, wait, family court and common sense. Yeah, those are kind of oxymorons. I'm sorry. I do not have a high opinion of family court. You know how I feel about that. Because a lot of the judges there are either uneducated as to psychological views or they're narcissists themselves. Don't get me started. So yeah, it's ridiculous. They need training in, especially family court, because here's the deal, guys. 90% of the divorce cases are handled amicably, believe it or not, Ripley's, because they don't want to drag it out. They don't want to have, they just realize they don't get along. It's the 10% that are the high conflict divorces that end up in front of these judges. And these judges need to be educated on it because those are the cases that go to court. The ones that can sit down and settle clearly are not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or at least not to the extent that they are personality disordered because they don't care. They just want it done. Right. So, God, my brain just starts when I think about this. What the hell was the question? I'm sorry. I lost my mind. Stalkers. So they made it now so that it's next to impossible to get an order of protection, which is stupid unless you've got a ton of evidence. And yes, they do get a high out of stalking. It's a ha 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 for them. Whoa, hello, sorry. It's a ha 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 for them. It's a see, I have power over you. See, I can make you nervous. See, that's an abuser. That's an abuser. They want to show that they can make you sweat, basically. So I had a stalker a few years ago, and I immediately got an order of protection. And they thought that they were going to be able to continue to drive by my house and, post things on the internet and this, that, and the other thing. And I showed them very quickly that was not going to happen. And then the next step after that would have been a civil lawsuit. So yeah, it's you cannot be timid when you are protecting yourself and your children. So if an order of protection is necessary, you must gather all of your evidence. You can't just say to the judge, oh, they're stalking me. Well, where's your proof? So that means a Ring camera on your house. That means cameras around the outside of the house. That means saving all emails, all texts, all written communication, any notes left on your car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, any voicemail messages, and you take that in as evidence to show the judge that you're not just, whistling a tune here. It's real. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's the problem, is because narcissists have also used, again, the family courts against the sane target. They'll do, accusations of child abuse and this, that, and the other thing. Well, there's no proof. And then, of course, the whole thing goes through, and they're hoping that because there was an accusation that somehow casts aspersion on the sane partner. So that's why you got to have proof. You gots to have proof. This is why I want to get this lawyer on here, because people don't understand. The court system is a country unto itself with its own language. I'm not kidding you. This is why you need a lawyer, because it's really hard to navigate all of the terms, all of the ways things are done, how to bring up evidence, how to do this, how to do that. I mean, it really is its own language and its own country, really. So, you cannot just march into a court and make an accusation. You have to have evidence backing it up. That's the only thing that's going to help your case, is solid evidence. And you've got to show over a series of time that, yeah, they've been doing this, and this. And that's what I did. I had all of the evidence, and I had eyewitnesses that, showed that this person was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and stalking me. And that's why I got the order of protection. So yeah, so that's, whew, yeah. So you cannot just make an accusation. You have to have the evidence backing it up. It's not grand theater, but the abuser will see it as grand theater. That's their chance to smear you. That's their chance to intimidate you. That's their chance. So they think, because they don't understand that the ultimate power in that courtroom is the judge, and they don't take kindly to anybody stealing their spotlight. So yeah, so your hope is that if you have to go to court against a narcissist or an abuser or a stalker or whatever, is that they're so arrogant and so disordered and think they run the show that they'll piss the judge off. And that does happen quite often, which just makes me happy, like nobody's business to watch somebody like that implode. So there you go. All right. I hope that answered that question. Yeah, no, it's intentional. They know what they're doing. It's not about trauma. It's about power and control. And they need to show somebody. And yes, they do get high off of scaring people. What's the difference between asocial and antisocial? I think I answered that, but I am going to reply again. So asocial is somebody who just doesn't like to socialize. It's an introvert. They don't like to socialize. They don't like to go out. They don't like people, or it's too people-y out there, that kind of thing. Antisocial is the laws of the land, the social rules that hold the glue that holds society together do not apply to them. So they think in their heads, because that's what they do. So it's different. It's not that they don't like to socialize. It's that they really truly feel that the rules don't apply to them and they can do whatever they want. So that's antisocial. Is DBT group therapy? It can. And usually what I've seen is group therapy combined with individual. So one week, one part of the week is group therapy. The next part is individual, and they do both. And it's great. And I think it's very helpful. Is the entitlement narcissist show, like speaking abruptly to a flight attendant and being a little demanding, considered a little antisocial personality trait? Well, that is the entitlement. That is the, snapping at people. Oh, I hate that. I used to work as a waitress. I hate that. When people snap their finger at you and it's like, do I look like a German Shepherd? Well, I might. But that doesn't mean you get to snap at me. Sorry, I'm a human being. I'm a waitress. I'm doing the best I can. So they're the ones who demand, immediate compliance with their thoughts, feelings, wants, needs, desires, whatever. Is that antisocial? Yeah, a little bit. You bet. It usually antisocial applies to or means breaking laws, arson, stealing, cheating, embezzlement, lying, that kind of thing. So yeah. All right, let's see. Where are we doing here? Okay. So is there something that causes bipolar, or is it genetic? I believe it is genetic. I do. It runs in families, and it's not a personality disorder. It's not a mental illness in the sense that it's not behaviors. It is it's genetic. It's because the brain is not sending and receiving in the proper amount of feel-good chemicals and reabsorbing the feel-good chemicals. So that's basically what's going on. Can PTSD be misdiagnosed as bipolar? Yeah, actually it can. So basically, that's why I'm saying when you get a diagnosis, no matter what that diagnosis is, you have the right to challenge that. You do, because I hate to break it to you, not every therapist bothers taking CEUs, number one, or really bothers to understand diagnostic stuff, or bothers to really investigate, well, what's really driving this behavior? Do you see where I'm going with that? So yeah, PTSD can get misdiagnosed as borderline. Did I say that right? Yeah, or bipolar. Yeah, it can, because of the mania and because of the mood swings. Mood swings. That's another thing that PTSD has, is mood swings, going from happy to angry, or happy to sad, or, whatever. It's the mood swings. And those happen with PTSD. Those happen with Cptsd. So that's why I'm saying, really understand what the diagnosis is if you have somebody that's diagnosing you. So there is that. Hold on just a second. Is there a book which explains how to do, how to do tapping and other similar coping strategies? I'm pretty sure there is. I mean, there's a book on everything. EFT is not my modality. I do CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive meaning thoughts, behaviors, therapy, helping that person out. So there are books on tapping. There are books on EFT. You would have to go onto Amazon and see. I recommend getting with a practitioner, because the practitioner has been trained in this and can really help you with this. So I had a client a few years ago who did faster EFT, and he swore by it. He was so happy with the results. But then I also read things that were saying, oh no, this is not a good way to go, blah, blah, blah. So do your research. It's like, what are the general reviews? What are other practitioners saying about it? Does it help? Does it not help? Are there dangers to it? Read it up. Read it up. That's always a good thing to do. Hold on. Let's see what else we got. Okay. All right. Whew. So basically, in a nutshell, to summarize, there's going to be a whole bunch of acronyms when you get a psych eval done. When you get a diagnosis, there's going to be acronyms. Make sure you understand what the acronyms are. If you don't agree with them, you have the right to say, I don't think this is the right diagnosis. You know, again, just like how doctors missed Terry's colon cancer, psychiatrists can miss somebody who's a really good manipulator. Do you see where I'm going with that? So, so make sure you understand what everything is. You can get a copy of the DSM. It will put you to sleep, guarantee it. But if you want to understand the different diagnoses for mental health, the DSM-5, I'm sure it's at the library. You could do that. So I think next week, and yes, things can get misdiagnosed. Abso-freaking-lutely. So PTSD can be misdiagnosed as bipolar. Bipolar can be misdiagnosed as borderline. Borderline can be misdiagnosed as bipolar, or, you know, and they completely miss the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder altogether, not realizing that borderline is based in trauma. Hello. So yeah. So really important to understand what that psych eval is saying. Go over it with a professional so you understand all the shorts. You know what I'm saying? All the letters. So yeah, so there is that. All right. So next week, I want to talk about how to help your kids. So, because this is just, I don't know, it's just up. It's like there's a lot of divorces going on. This seems to be the time of year for it. So I want to talk about how to help your kids if there is parental alienation going on. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to say parental alienation because the last time I titled one parental alienation, they refused to give me any sort of sponsorship. And I'm just like, really, or not sponsorship, but monetary from YouTube. So anyway, so I'm going to talk about how to help your kids. How to help your kids. That's just going to be the title of it. And I'm going to cover parental alienation. I'm going to talk about the divorce. I'm going to talk about, you know, getting them help, the different types of therapy that kids can go to depending on their age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is going to be the topic next week. All right, my loves, you guys go be awesome. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Oh, and one last thing I wanted to say. If you have noticed that people are driving like morons, they are. I firmly believe that because of the pandemic, there are a lot of people walking around with PTSD and don't realize it. Short-tempered, impulsive, rumination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so funny because I've had so many other practitioners and so many of my clients go, wow, you know, because of me understanding my post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm handling the pandemic stuff much better. And I'm like, well, yeah, because the average Joe is not educated on this. So if you know somebody that seems to be suffering from PTSD due to the pandemic, educate them. Let them know they're not crazy, but they need to get that handled so they're not driving like, you know, crazy people on the streets and being impulsive and angry and short-tempered and blah, blah, blah. So there it is. All right, kids, be good. And I will talk to you next week. Bye.